I would like to invite Mr. Vivek Roy from Siemens on the stage, please.
Thank you so much, and very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a pleasure to be back in the physical form of ARC in 2023. This is, I think, my third ARC, and it's great to see my fellow members also here. So I'm going to talk about a really very important topic today, and I'm sure that all of you are aware of cybersecurity and how cybersecurity is gaining more and more importance as enterprises are going digital. So without wasting time, let me just start with a nice saying by Gene Spafford. Yeah, he's a great professor from Purdue University, and he says the only true secure system is one that is powered off, cast in a block of concrete and sealed in a lead-lined room with armed guards. But still he has doubts, right? So this saying, and I just really take a little bit of a time to explain you about this quote, and this is actually what is the problem today. You may have the best systems in place, but still the vulnerability may come through a different attack surface. You don't know it. You never can imagine it, right? So what's really happening is there are a lot of global trends. I think COVID has taught us a lot of lessons. It has acted as a catalyst also in bringing in a lot of change in the manufacturing space, in the way we communicate, etc. So digitalization is now a prerogative that every organization must have or must do. And with digitalization coming in with connected assets all around the space, whether it is IT or the OT, the attack surfaces are changing. Yeah, the attack surfaces are going very close to your manufacturing. The second most important part is the lack of skilled workforce. In the OT space, we are very good at managing processes. We are very good at managing technology. But the same workforce is unskilled to handle a cybersecurity topic. And we'll come across the challenges that OT face. Third is there are increasing legal guidelines or regulations coming in. I'm sure most of you would know that India has its own CERT, that is Computer Emergency Response Team. And CERT-in is also bringing in a lot of guidelines which today PSUs or industries also have to follow. And last is globalization. So it all started with the IT, with information technology. Everybody felt that an enterprise needs to be protected. The IT needs to be protected first, because that's the exit point for data in the organization, and that's the entry point for data in the organization, like employees, etc., and everything, systems that are made for IT. So while IT picked up a lot of space or a lot of pace in the technology adoption for cybersecurity, OT at the same time fell back. Yeah, and now OT is trying to catch up. So how do you really secure your OT? Yeah. Now this is a small flowchart, not very complicated, but just to tell you that OT and IT are coming together in a digital enterprise, right? So securing only the IT is not going to solve the purpose. You have to have a secure interface to OT. In OT environment, there are different challenges. Yeah. There are different security requirements of OT. As well as one very important topic that OT faces is legacy systems. Yeah. The average age of a computer that you are using in the office of refresh is like 3 to 4 years. you cannot refresh your OT assets so soon. 25 years is minimum. And unfortunately, whatever you do in the IT space for cybersecurity cannot fit into the OT space. So it's not one size fits all. So let's just look at some statistics, and it's for you to read, but one very, very important statistic out of this slide is 72% of ransomware attacks occur in manufacturing. I'm sure all of you know what is ransomware. The media is all over ransomware topics, right? So basically, this is a very interesting chart by Gartner, and I'll spend a little bit of time on this. This is the different phases, or 6 phases of adoption of cybersecurity. The first phase is awareness. Yeah. Are we aware that a breach has happened? Like, I think a very simple example is, we all give our Aadhaar card numbers. We all, whenever we check into a hotel, the hotelier asks us that, give us your Aadhaar card. We happily give them the Aadhaar card. But do you know that government tells you that you need to mask some of the digits and only release the last 4 digits of your Aadhaar card? How many of us do it? I'm sure very few. So, are we aware? Yeah, the first phase is awareness. Second phase is outreach, understanding what assets are there in the OT. What is the topology? What are the different protocols that we are managing in OT? And phase 3 is the oh wow moment. In the oh wow moment, I suddenly find, as individuals, as enterprises, we always feel that we have the best in class systems. But then comes the oh wow moment, and I said, oh, I have so many unmanaged devices. I have so many ports open. I give my OEM an open connection to my OT. Then suddenly, because of all the bantering that comes from the CXO level, we get into a firefighting mode. We start patching. And then there is an integration phase and optimization phase. So 60% of the organizations interviewed are in only phase 1. And these are OT organizations. 30% are in the middle phase, and hardly 10% of organizations are actually, into the last phase. So another statistics that I'm throwing at you is 740,000 devices came up in FY22. In Siemens only. This is a Siemens internal document. Yeah. And at the same time, you see 13% of all vulnerabilities disclosed were critical. So there are always 2 aspects you should remember in cybersecurity. One is that you cannot live today in an environment where your devices are not connected. We all in this room are very connected, right? But that means we are also vulnerable to attack. So combining the 2, we have to see how can we bring cybersecurity for the industry, for the OT space. So 91% of the interviewed people believe IT and OT should be collectively responsible for security machinery. Amazing statistic. Sitting in OT, we are always feeling कोई है ऊपर जो हमें बताएगा कि क्या करना है साइबर सिक्योरिटी के लिए. नहीं. It is us. We are the people who are responsible along with the top floor. On the shop floor, we are responsible along with the top floor, and we need to collaborate. So the 4 big topics are asset lifecycle. Yeah? Because we do not refresh assets in OT. We do not even patch assets in OT. We leave them as they are working. चल रहा है तो चलने दो. Heterogeneity. There are so many OEMs, there are so many different machine suppliers, there are so many different technologies that we are adopting. Focus on availability and risk-based protection. So this slide is of course more of a European, but I would like to draw your attention to the recent announcement that has happened by European Union to bring in the NIST 2 guidelines. And why I'm really mentioning about NIST 2 guidelines is because India is also going to adopt to NIST 2 guidelines very shortly, maybe in a span of the next 1 year. NIST 2 guidelines are going to penalize organizations if they don't follow cybersecurity guidelines. And this can be up to 10% of their annual revenue. Along with the OEMs who are supplying into that plant, the plant operators, everybody is going to be fined. So I'm painting two scenarios for you in OT. The first scenario, the first use case is, what if your production has a downtime because of a cyber attack? Production is lost. It's not only production loss. Intellectual property is lost. The most important. Let's take an example of a pharma company. A formulation that is being made in a batch. And if the operator system suddenly starts behaving rapid, or there's a ransomware attack, just imagine what happens to the data. On the other side, the data is completely available with the attacker. And he's asking you money. You feel that paisa de diya ho gaya, but remember that your data is already in the dark web. You have lost the complete intellectual property of that process. So basically that's why it's essential to have a comprehensive cybersecurity program. The second use case is extremely important. This is about supply chain cybersecurity. Whenever we in OT space or in the industry space or manufacturing space, whatever you may call it, are buying products, especially the end users, the asset owners. Let's take an example of my previous speaker, Indian Oil. They are buying systems from an OEM. Now, little that we realize that these suppliers can also bring in vulnerabilities with their systems. So you feel you're buying the best in class, and then suddenly some integrator of that OEM did not follow some guideline and brought in a vulnerability into your plant. So this is the second use case that I would like to just highlight, that's why you need the preparedness of having cybersecurity specifications in your RFPs. And they are already coming in many of the public sector units. So what you need is a multi-layered cybersecurity concept. I have a watch on the time, so we are talking about three aspects in cybersecurity and especially OT security. One is data. You need to secure the data exchange between OT and IT. And remember that all data is not same. OT data is different than IT data. The second aspect is securing remote access. Inevitably, I will say, not on the slide, through my experience of dealing in cybersecurity for so many years, 50% of the attacks come because of remote access. Because we've given an OEM a freeware tool to access the plant. It's disaster. Second is the systems that we are using. So secure the communication systems, the perimeters that are there between the IT or the OT. The third and the most important is the people. And I bring you to the first slide, the saying that even if there are armed guards, I can't trust. What if somebody just goes to the armed guards and says, I give you $1 million, open that vault for me? So, people awareness, training employees, using personalized access, using multi-factor authentications as some of the first focus is on the product that enters your premise. So there is an R&D team. Now this is of course something very specific to Siemens, but I'm sure most of the OEMs do follow this. Has to sign the firmware, then system test that firmware and then put it on the product. It doesn't finish there. Through the vulnerability management tools that we have on the OT, which are constantly throwing us data about the different vulnerabilities that are coming in the OT space, this data is fed back to our R&D. Also through the components update that come, all this data then goes to the product cert. So Siemens also has its own product computer response system, and they publish vulnerabilities in all the Siemens software and hardware systems to all the customers. You can all subscribe this on our website. And then there are always researcher organizations that give their input, and so this is how it becomes a closed loop, and this is how it should be, so that this product, when it enters your premise from the factory to its actual application area, it should be fully secure. Now let me talk about multi-layered security. This is defense in depth. This is IEC 62443 as a standard. So we talk about three aspects over here. The first aspect is plant security, this extreme outer edge. What are the policies of security for your plant? How do people enter the plant? How are they checked, etc. Physical monitoring. Second is the network security, and third is the system integrity. So when we come to plant security, we are talking about carrying out security assessments and consulting. And in this, basically, we identify the various gaps as per in the plant, as per the IEC 62443 principles. When we come to network security, I will not run through the entire slides are available. I'm sure ARC will publish it. The very important aspect I would like to touch upon in network security is the third point, perimeter-based securing IT-OT integration. Even if your OT gets attacked, as per the enterprise guidelines, it should not affect the IT. And similarly, if your IT gets attacked, it should not affect the OT. So we need to secure both the islands, and please, there's nothing called as air gap. I think most of you all must have heard this term, fancy term of air gap. OT is air gap. OT तो internet के साथ connect नहीं होता, कुछ नहीं होगा OT को. Please, that's all rubbish. A simple pen drive can be inserted into your system and the whole plant can be brought down. System integrity. This is talking about all the systems that you are using in the OT space. The PLCs, the DCS systems, the instrumentation systems, the PCs, the servers, the HMIs. We need very, very thorough endpoint protection and a risk-based approach over here. So, I'm coming to the end of my presentation. I have 2 minutes left. This is the complete cybersecurity step-by-step journey. Again, it's divided into 5 phases. The first phase is, where do I stand? And where do I, in the sense, the I refers to an enterprise. Find out where do you stand. So there are always security guidelines which are raised by the CIOs or the CISOs in some organizations. Are we following these guidelines in OT? Do a cybersecurity assessment. With this assessment, you come to know where is your as-is condition. This was to be followed, but I am not following it, etc. Go into asset management, which is the next phase. in the asset management phase, you come to know what do you actually have. And I'm not talking about the assets which are not connected to the network. Remember that even if an asset is not connected to the network, it needs to be assessed. It needs to come into your repository. You need to protect it. Then comes phase 2, which is whatever you have learned from phase 1 and phase 2 you apply. You get into the actual mending of your architecture, you put the endpoint protections, etc. and all that. But remember that phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 kar liya to it's not the end. You need to have a constant monitoring. That's phase number 4. Despite doing these 4 phases, there is no silver bullet for cybersecurity. Friends, we still can be attacked. Nobody can give us 100% foolproof system. So very important is, remember, learn from the AIMS attack. What happened in AIMS? You need to have a business continuity plan. What if I am attacked? What am I going to do? Do I take backups of my system? Do I have, if it's a critical process, do I have a backup system exactly same which is clone the data ready? That if this gets attacked, I just switch, whatever. So a business continuity plan and a disaster recovery plan is very important. And this comes back as a closed loop to the governance and the policies that you will have as an enterprise. So that's it from my side. I think, just to summarize, improve IT/OT integration, deal with increasing cybersecurity attacks. Cybersecurity is going to be needed. Attacks are going to come. Don't stop digitalizing or digitizing just because you are afraid of getting attacked. It will anyways happen if it has to happen. Yeah? But have the right checks and balances, and more security compliances are going to follow. So that's it from my side. Thank you so much, ARC, for giving me this opportunity, and thank you for your patient listening. And I conclude it here, and we meet again in the panel discussion.